Imagine putting your entire tournament life on the line. Not with the nuts, not with a monster, but with King High. One man did that in front of the world and walked away a legend. This is the hand that launched the poker boom. Chris Moneymaker versus Sammy Farha, 2003 WSOP Main Event. Stick around, I'll tell you exactly what happened, why Farha folded, and the 3 brutal lessons every player should learn. If you love poker history explained in one take, hit like, subscribe, and let's dive in. Scene, Las Vegas. The whole poker world watching. It's the 2003 WSOP Main Event heads up. The stakes aren't small. This is a bracelet, a career, a generational moment. Chris Moneymaker, the amateur qualifier whose story already felt cinematic, is on one side of the felt. Sammy Farha, the polished pro with cash, game cred, and tournament experience, sits opposite him. The cameras are rolling, and the narrative is simple. David versus Goliath. Except this David is about to do something brazen. The hand in a minute, pre-flop to river. Pre-flop, Moneymaker has K7 and Farha has 9-9. The flop comes 9-2-6, Farha flops top pair. The action checks around and the hand looks textbook. Pro with middle pair versus amateur with air. The turn and river action set the stage for something audacious. And then, on the river, Moneymaker shoves enough to represent a made hand that he does not have. Farha, with a pair of 9s, thinks and lays his hand down. The fold is electric, one of the biggest pots of the final won by a player who showed a bluff. King High. That moment shifted the match in the mythology of modern poker. Why Farha folded and why the fold makes sense. On the surface, folding 9s to a river all-in looks unthinkable. But pros don't fold that way without a reason. Here's what made the fold rational in context. Board texture plus line telling a story. Moneymaker's line across the streets consistently represented a strong made hand or a very specific runner-runner draw. The line, how he checked, bet, and then shoved, created a storyline that Farha had to parse. Was this a value shove or an overbet bluff trying to fold out better hands? In that spot, poker theory says sometimes the player with a one-pair hand has to assess whether their hand is a bluff catcher or simply not good enough. Heads-up psychology, heads-up dynamics are brutally different. Players polarize ranges more often. Shoves represent either the nuts or nothing. When the better's line is consistent with having a very narrow value range, calling becomes expensive. Tournament dynamics and pressure, the magnitude of the match, the bracelet pressure, TV lights, and the narrative changes thresholds. Pros avoid calling marginal spots where the opponent's story fits a believable value range. Those elements combined made Farha's fold defensible and Moneymaker's shove masterful. The moment, the table reaction. Watch the footage. Announcers freeze, rails lean in, and Farha utters the famous line as he shows the fold. Norman Chad called it the bluff of the century. For viewers at home, it felt like theater. For players at the table, it was a clinic in timing, nerve, and storytelling, the way Moneymaker made the line believable. That fold handed momentum to the amateur and flipped the match. Deep dive, the anatomy of a world-class bluff, how to build the story. Great bluffs aren't magic, they're engineered. Think of a bluff like a short film you write, cast, and direct in real time. The cards are props. The job is to build a narrative where folding is the rational choice. Define your narrative early. From the first bet you make in the hand, you need a coherent story that can survive scrutiny on the river. That doesn't mean you can't mix in deception. It means every action should be plausibly consistent with what you want your opponent to believe. Example narratives. I flopped a medium pair and protected it, or I was slow playing a strong hand and now shove. Each requires a different sequence of checks, bets, and sizing. Control tempo. Timing is content. Fast, confident bets telegraph conviction. Hesitation telegraphs uncertainty. Moneymaker's line in the iconic hand carried tempo that read like commitment. A small detail, but one professionals notice instantly. Sizing is storytelling. Small bets suggest weakness or pot control. Large bets scream value or polarize to nuts, bluff. Use sizing to narrow your opponent's believable options. If you want your shove to represent a nut or near nut, Size earlier streets so that a river shove is a credible end to a value line. Use checks and delayed aggression selectively. A well-timed check can set up a believable river narrative. It implies either trap or fear. The key is plausibility. Your river action must be a logical capstone of the earlier pattern. From Farha's seat, why a pro might fold the obvious call. To truly appreciate the fold, flip the table mentally. What was Sammy seeing? Range assessment, not ego. Pros don't call on emotion, they call on range. If your opponent's line narrows to a range that crushes your hand more often than not, the right play is fold even with a pair. Heads up, that margin shifts. Many river shoves are polar, either the nuts or air. If your read places your opponent more in the nut part of that spectrum, a fold is correct. Tournament currency. Heads up, in a high-pressure, high-variance event, one wrong call can cost you the bracelet. The decision calculus includes not just immediate chips, but the strategic value of survival, ICM-ish pressure, and psychological impact. Metagame memory. The immediate table history matters. If your opponent has shown or represented similar lines before, you must update. Pros remember textures and lines. They see pattern where amateurs see a single action. Modern application, how to practice building that line. Drills that actually work. You can't reliably bluff without practicing the story-building muscle. Here's a compact routine. Hand scripting, 10 minutes per day. Take a hand you played or a pro hand and write a one-sentence narrative for every betting round. Ask, what story does my action tell? Would a reasonable opponent believe it? Timing practice, 5 minutes. Use a metronome or timer while you study hand replays. Count the beats between actions. Confident players have consistent cadence. Nervous, jerky timing telegraphs weakness. Live table experiments. Session rule. Designate one session per week for line-building experiments. Play simplified ranges and force yourself to construct narratives rather than rely on automatic lines. Aftermath, why this hand mattered. Beyond the pot, that single fold and shove did something bigger. It rewired the cultural perception of poker. And people saw anyone could sit at the table and win. The hand became a proof point. Timing, nerve, and narrative can trump pedigree. That's why the hand is still taught in strategy sessions and replayed in highlight reels. If you loved breaking down that moment, smash like, drop a comment with your favorite famous bluff, and subscribe. I'll do a technical follow-up next. Exactly how to build a believable line when you bluff. 3 scripts you can practice at low stakes. Want the clip timed and slowed for practice? Say clip please in the comments and I'll pin the best replay.